What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Mostly Occasionally Show. I'm your host, Brandon Weiner, the publisher of BroBible.com. Today we're talking about one of my favorite subjects in the world, the band Phish. We have Scott Rogowsky on the show. So you might remember Scott as the host of the iconic HQ Trivia back in the day. He's a New York-based comedian and entertainer, and he's a really big Phish fan. So after Phish's spring 2025 tour out here on the West Coast, Scott wrote this incredibly thoughtful, introspective essay about his personal journey with the band Phish. He kind of talked a lot about growth, really, personal growth, about the idea of how his mindset around this incredibly iconic band that has super passionate fans like myself, and about his journey and about how it's like changed how he thinks about gratitude and being in the moment and everything around kind of introspection and thoughtfulness, just the universe itself. So Scott wrote this essay over in his Substack, and I was thinking, man, it'd be really cool to talk to Scott about Phish. So I invited him on the Mostly Occasionally Show, and he was super gracious with his time. First of all, you have to go read this essay. Scott really puts a lot of himself out there. He talks about his retreat to do something called the Hoffman Process, where he really kind of looked within about how he thinks about his relationships and, you know, the world in general, life in the world in general. So first of all, go read his essay. Second of all, enjoy our conversation about it. We talk a lot about what it means to be a Phish fan, how grateful we are to continue experiencing this band and all their innovation as we keep growing up, if you will. I mean, Phish has been a part of my life since I was like in the 7th grade. My first Phish show was in the year 2000. And here it is, 25 years later, and I'm still going to Phish shows and having the greatest time of my life. And that's the same for Scott, I think, in how he's talking about just this band and the journey that he's on. So enjoy the conversation, and thanks so much to Scott for coming on. If you dig it, please throw me a subscribe. Thanks. So Scott, how you doing, man? How's life?
Dude, life is but a dream.
Huge
Shaboom.
Congratulations on your engagement.
Thank you so much. You are up to date with the Substack, I presume.
I am up to date now.
Which has been, you know, it's really the start of this whole year for me. And when I say year, my 40th year, my December 4th birthday, what I love about it the most, I love a couple things about my birthday. One is that it sometimes falls within the week of Hanukkah, Chanukia, and which is the Jewish holiday that as a child, I was gifted presents. Now, it was like a double bonus, right? It's like whether it's during Hanukkah, right before, right after, it's just a massive time of gift receiving for me personally. And I like gifts. I like getting, you know, at the time, toys, baseball cards, you know, the socks I could have done without. I got a lot of socks during Hanukkah, but generally it would be like, okay, you get the socks for Hanukkah, and then your birthday, that's when you get the Spider-Man, you know, Hobgoblin action figure. Yeah. So I like that, but I also like that it's towards the end of the year, right? So for me, I'm a big believer in like the idea of renewal and turning the page and starting over. And, you know, for me, the Gregorian calendar is a great time to do that as we look back at the year that was and the year ahead. And the fact that my birthday is so close to that transitional moment allows me to sort of mark my own personal years with the calendar years. Does that make sense? So
yeah, totally.
Yeah. Like when I think about this year, I think about turning 40 this past December and what this journey's been like, man. I mean, now here we are, I guess I'm 6 months in to being I'm 40 and a half, pretty much precisely.
And technically, when you really think about it, you kind of start counting at 1. So like you know, like that's like a cruel thing about birthdays is really you're starting when you're already 1 year old. Like,
right. I guess like I capped my 40th. That was my 40th year.
Yeah.
And now I'm in my 40. I'm halfway to my 41st. So, but honestly, dude, you're catching me at a really unique time because yes, I'm halfway into my 41st, which has been the best year of my life. for so many reasons. One was starting the Substack on my birthday and unlocking, just my writing, which I put on the back burner and neglected. I will say, if I'm being honest with myself, it was a bit of a subconscious fear of perhaps failure, fear of vulnerability. I don't know. As I said in my very first post on Substack on my birthday, I always considered myself a writer. Like I always put it down on government forms just because it's like easier to, what am I? I really don't know. Am I a producer? Am I a comedian? Am I an act? I'm not an actor for sure. But am I a host? What the fuck does that mean? If I write a host, if I write comedian, no one
Are you
believes me.
seating people at their tables?
Yeah. I'm a maitre d' essentially. So no, I say writer. It's just like simple. But the truth is I wasn't writing. I was a writer who wasn't writing. I was tweeting and I would write. I was texting. I did a lot of texting. That counts as a form of writing. I was very good at like communicating with women on dating apps. Like that's writing. But to start the Substack and to make my writing, to make it intentional, to focus on it, to publish it, to really craft it, and to give myself the freedom of long form, which I never, dude, I dreaded writing essays in college, like papers. Are you kidding me? Fucking I had to write a paper. Now I'm writing my own papers without anybody asking me to. Nobody wants this. Nobody assigned it. It's just coming out of me. I think of something that interests me, or I want to celebrate a musician I like, or a band I like, or a t-shirt that I own that I like, or, I've written about my mother. I've written about relationships. I've written about my fiance now. So yes, to tie back to your initial prompt there, I did get engaged a few weeks ago, and it's just all part of this incredible journey to, I guess into my 40s. And I've talked a lot, and I could stop there, but I will wrap it up just by saying the other reason why this moment is so special for me this very day is that a year ago today, I was in Petaluma, California, in the Sonoma Mountains, and just wrapping up my retreat that I went on. And if you read the Substack, you probably heard me mention a few times something called the Hoffman retreat. No, what was it called? The Hoffman Process. And it was truly life-changing in ways that, people say, oh, this song changed my life, or this meal is oh, you got to try that pizza at Lindustry. It's life-changing. It's like, okay, does it really change your life? My friend, shout out Tom McCaffrey, who is a comedian that I love, and he had a great joke on the album that I produced for him in 2008 called Lou Diamond Phillips, ? Which is available on Spotify and Apple Music, I think. He had a joke about like life-changing, just the phrase life-changing. We use it all the time. Oh man, it's changed my life. It's like, really? The song changed your life? Was the song called like Steven has AIDS? Like, was it like a diagnosis from your doctor that like you have like a horrible disease? Is that how it changed your life? Like, how could a song change your life? I'm not doing it justice. He tells it way better. I believe AIDS or HIV is in the punchline. Tom, if you're listening, I apologize for butchering that, but listen up the joke.
I mean, certain art, obviously, like, don't get me wrong, I get it. It's cliche and overused to a degree, but if art can truly change your worldview, like, it does change your life.
Yeah. I mean, there's something to that, now I'm remembering another part of the joke was like, yeah, man, I used to have this really high-paying job. I was a CEO of a pharmaceutical company. I had a mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut. And now I'm living in a van down by the river. My wife divorced me, all because of Gloria Estefan's "The Rhythm's Gonna Get You."
It changed my life in the wrong direction. Yeah, like life-changing has to be like usually good and enhancing. Like except for the times when it gets dark. Dude, well, I'm glad you brought up the Hoffman process stuff, because that really stood out to me in the piece you put together on Phish, and the way that you talked about that retreat. Is that the proper word to put it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, the way I sort of phrased it, and framed it for myself and for other people. Because before I went on this thing, I would tell people, hey, I'm going away for a week. I'm not gonna have my phone. I mean, I was calling it a digital detox retreat, which in one sense it is, because yeah, they take your phone on the first morning, and it's an essential part of the process, because what it does, just in a nutshell, what I tell people, like, now that I've done it, and I can explain it better, it allowed me to, like, meet myself. And I was only able to do that without the distraction of the outside world, of my thoughts. The phone is obviously a huge distraction for us, and we sort of say it all the time jokingly, like, oh my God, my screen time is crazy up. And people are we always point out that people are just constantly on their phones. But yeah, it's a distraction, not just in the sense of, like, it's distracting me from, like, my girlfriend's trying to tell me something and I'm on my phone and, like, what? It's more just like I'm distracting myself from my true self. And it's not just the phone, right? It's literally, it could be music, it could be anything. It could be, running and jogging and yoga and, good things, theoretically nice, good things, right? Going to a museum, anything you do that is taking your thoughts off of yourself and putting it onto some other object or concept is a distraction from the self. So that's what this process did. It took away all distraction. And it was, it was obviously guided, because they had these, like, teachers, these PhDs, and these, essentially therapists and coaches, and they sort of coach you through these guided visualizations and meditations and somatic expression work and all sorts of different modalities of therapy. But it's like a concentrated week-long therapy session where you're, again, with therapy, which I've done many times, you go in, and for that 45 minutes, you're locked in. You're not on your phone when you're in therapy, but the minute you get out, you're on your phone. And you're calling people, and you're thinking about the getting tickets to fucking Riviera Maya or whatever you're doing. Like, it's just life, right? Life is distracting. But there is no chance to take your mind off anything but yourself and your thoughts and your feelings. Understanding, why do I do the things I do? Why do I feel that way? Why do I feel so shitty all the time? And why do I think I'm a piece of shit? And why, whatever. I mean, all the negative, dark thoughts that I had all my life, I was allowed to sort of, like, sit with them and reason with them and process them. Like, so it's called the process. It's like, and then, like, process through it and go, okay, I'm not my thoughts. I'm not my feelings. Like, there's a deeper, higher self in there that is sitting behind all of it. And boy, that's a hell of a realization to have.
Wow, that's beautiful. Like, I mean, so I turned 40 this year too. So we're of the same, like, generation age. And I think there's something really unique about our generation, that we kind of grew up in a time of, I know it wasn't, but, like, I perceived, like, there being a lot of innocence before, like, digital connection, and I think we got to really experience that, like, as part of, let's call it, like, 1984, 85 to, like, 1994, 95, like, and when the world became incredibly hardwired, we sort of, the main impulse became to seek. Like, it was like we're constantly seeking, and that's really what the phone enables, is, like, this idea of, like, seeking through this, like.
And listen, man, it's not, like, necessarily a bad thing. What I've come to realize is, there is a conscious way to use the phone. Like, it's a device, it's a tool. And just like AI, like we were talking about off mic, all these technologies are coming along. They're changing our lives so rapidly. It's happening so quickly that it's hard for some of us to even wrap our heads around it, to appreciate it, or to even know how to use it correctly, use it in a healthy way, right? Like, there is a lot, obviously, it's incredible what a phone can do, and to have it when you're lost with GPS, and, just the fact that you can text and call people around the world, and video time, FaceTime. Like, my nephews and my sister live in Scotland. I could FaceTime with them. Like, that was like, this is Star Trek fantasy shit when we were growing up, right? So like, it is all in your pocket. I mean, it's crazy. But there's just like everything, there's a polarity, plus and negative, positive, negative. And it's again, we all have a choice. It comes down to choice. How do I want to engage with this thing? Do I want to indulge in the dark side, the negative? Do I want to just I can spend all day, every day in bed scrolling, Instagram and TikTok and Tinder and whatever the fuck. And I have done that in my life. There have been times I've done that. Now I go, is that the best way to use my time? Or, is there a more positive, healthy way to use my time? So it's all becoming just learning. It's a very simple thing. There's no, what's so funny about the Hoffman process or any type of like self-transformation, whatever you want to call it, when it comes down to it, when you kind of get through it, you realize how fucking simple it all is. It's almost like a magic trick. They call it a magic trick because going into it, our intellect, our brains want to go, oh my God, what do I have to do? Yeah, I recognize I don't like necessarily the way I am, and I don't love where I am in my life right now or my place in the world. Like I'm in a rut, right? Just say that's the way I felt. I felt like I was in a rut creatively, emotionally. And, when I was feeling that way, I thought, Jesus, what do I have to do now? I have to go to some like seminar. I have to read books. I've got to, what's the secret? I have to meditate. I don't want to meditate. I've tried meditate. I can't meditate. Like all, yoga. Do I do yoga? What the hell do I have to do? How hard is it going to be? I'm probably not good enough for it. And then that's the negative patterns. Even, what's so pernicious is the same patterns that were holding me back is holding me back from even exploring, like trying this thing, right? Like even trying the Hoffman process took a lot of fucking courage ultimately for me to go, yeah, I'm just going to have faith that this might work. And maybe it doesn't. I had to come to the point where I said, you know what? Worst case scenario, I spend this money, I go to this place, and I'm off my phone for 7 days, and that's a pretty good deal. I'll take a 7-day digital detox. It ended up being way more than that.
Do you mind if I say how many days was it total?
7 days.
7 days? Oh, okay, cool.
7 days. Which for me, being a single guy without a job, no family, I wasn't even single. Actually, I had a girlfriend at the time. But she was supportive. She kind of, I had to, I had to finesse that a little bit. I left voice notes, dude. This is the lengths I went because she asked for it. So, you can't call people, you can't text people, my family, friends, my girlfriend. So I created voice notes that I recorded like the night before this thing started. I scheduled them as emails for every morning throughout that week so that she would receive them as an email every day that week. And that was, sort of necessary for me to even be able to do this. She would allow me to do it. So that was maybe my one, challenge. It wasn't even challenging. I was happy to do it. But like I had people in my cohort who 3 kids, a wife, a major high-powered job, and they're right in the middle of a big deal that's closing. And all of a sudden they got to go off to the mountains and be disconnected. Like, holy shit, that took a lot of cojones. But you know what, man? I mean, the fact that they're willing to do that just goes to show how much, one might be struggling and like how important this is,
Is for people not familiar with the Hoffman process, is that socialization? Like, for example, I have friends that have gone to like India or Nepal and done like the silent retreat, like the silent meditation, like retreats and that sort of thing. Is there a socialization element though that is kind of important to that process with kind of friendly strangers?
Yeah, man. I would say, what I've never done a silent retreat, so I can't speak to the differences, but there is something really beautiful about sharing yourself, being so vulnerable. And it's not as if, I don't want to make the impression, like, it's not as if we're sitting around. It's not like, maybe like an AA meeting or something where everybody's kind of like just pouring out their trauma and sharing everything. You could share with the group as much as you want. It really is like a self journey, ultimately. Like you're kind of, a journey into the self, and everyone has that journey obviously by themselves. And, so you could be as expressive as you want and share as much as you want. I found it really beautiful to hear people who did choose to share, like what they had been through, the traumas and the abuse and the divorces and the addictions and suicides, really, really tough things. For me, it had this strange effect because I was sitting there and literally the second day of this process, I actually almost like left, or I almost was like, I don't know if this is for me. I thought like, whoa, I'm hearing a lot of heavy stuff being, shared. And, again, personally, I thankfully have never gone through that's kind of really, really heavy trauma. But turns out, we all have trauma, right? And sometimes it's a little t trauma, right? And whatever it is, doesn't matter. Like, the relativity of it doesn't matter. the essence of it is what matters. So trauma is trauma, whether it is abuse or suicide, or it's just like, for me, it was I had a mother with I have a chronically ill parent, which, I almost didn't recognize how much that affected me, as a kid. In fact, it took finding a letter that I wrote or a short story that I wrote when I was 10 years old. Talk about like the timing of life. And in the month before I left for this process, my mom found this story I wrote in her paper somewhere. And it said it was called living with a mom with MS. My mom has multiple sclerosis. And as a 10-year-old, I completely forgot I ever wrote this. I had no recollection of this. I wrote a short story where I said, there's a boy whose mom has MS. That boy is me. And sometimes he feels embarrassed when she has trouble walking in public and all these things. And sometimes he wonders why dad even married mom. And he says, because I love her very much. All these things. So it was affecting me clearly as a 10-year-old. And as a 40-year-old, had no recollection. So that right there proved to me, I was like, oh my God, this was a form of trauma for sure. Not to mention as I've learned since, the very basic universal traumas, whether your parents are totally healthy or not. Dude, when we're babies, when we're fucking 1, 2, 3 days old and we're crying for our mom or dad to come and they don't instantly come, that's a trauma. We don't have babies don't have a concept of time. That is infinity. Babies are like dogs, right? You're gone. When I'm away from my dog for 5 minutes, it's like I've been away for 5 years.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Babies are so present that they have no idea. If I don't have mom, I'm screaming, they're not coming immediately, then they're gone forever. I've been abandoned. So that very basic trauma of abandonment that we all experience, because no mother is ever 24/7 with their kid. It's just impossible. Moms have to take a shit sometimes. I hate to break this news to you on your podcast, but moms go to the bathroom and they can't be there to hold you when you're crying, right?
That's a whole thing on mom TikTok.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I'm not on mom TikTok. Maybe I should check it out. But maybe I could talk about this forever. I know we're supposed to talk about Phish, but all of this stuff kind of led me to rethink so much of my life, including my relationship to Phish, which is what I wrote about. And which I'm so glad you read and wanted to talk to me about. So
that's what I think is really interesting is that, you use the exact phrase that you wanted to reevaluate your negativity. And I think that's such an important thing that applies to something like Phish, which, to me, was the thing where I was like, yeah, that's that is it. Because, your first show was in 2003. Phish was 2003 was a great year. I saw a lot of shows. I was 17 years old at the time. It just cracked open this world that was so freaking cool to me, and yeah, but then as time marched on, the next year, I went to Coventry. It was a great time, terrible music, and embrace that kind of snark of the time, and then it kind of plants that snark is so easy to plant a seed in your brain, and just that's kind of the lens in which you see things,
Dude, you're spot on with it. And maybe it was a product of the time and the culture. I mean, George Bush, when I really think about the context of everything, after Gore Bush, I felt a little bit, personally speaking, I felt oh wow, another example of how there really is no justice and everything's corrupt. And going back to Nixon, right? Our parents experienced Watergate and Nixon, and then but that was for me our Watergate. This is bonkers, and this idiot, because people forget now how just, I mean, we have Trump now. But holy shit, I think Bush is dumber than Trump. I think he's way dumber than Trump. I think Bush is actually in a way so much worse.
Because there was so much rah patriotism at the time. It was kind of it was a blinder, if you will. And here we are teenagers, we're full of hormones and going through all these processes about our world, and having to, and some of our friends are going to serve in the military, and don't come back, and and now here we are.
9/11, dude.
Dude,
Like just even
9/11?
living through 9/11.
Yes.
And, you know, that's talk about trauma. Like, what the hell? You know, 9/11. And then for me, you know, you mentioned 2003, 4. So yes, 04, what, you know, Bush 2, right? So he won again. He won after all the disasters. That was a really shattering moment to me. Like, that's where I really kind of gave up hope. And I was 20 years old, and I just said, like, fuck it. How can I not become a cynic in a world where there doesn't seem to be, again, any justice? It doesn't seem to be any type of I always was raised with this idea, this like pre-digital idea, and you know, I want to come back to what we said earlier, like being a child of the 80s and 90s. What does that really mean? At least for me, in my situation, I almost felt like I was a child of the 50s because I was being raised by children of the 50s. My parents were kind of on the older side, so my dad was born in 48, my mom was born in 1950, and they had very traditional upbringings in the 1950s, Revolutionary Road kind of deal. So no, the more and more I think about my own family, my own childhood, I was kind of being raised with those values, very, very old school. And I say that to like bring it back to this idea of like optimism. Like I was raised with optimism. I was raised just like my dad felt, you know, JFK, like there's a better world ahead. You know, my dad was a big liberal Democrat, and I was raised and inculcated with these values, and I believed it. And then it just started to get eroded, right? And, you know, even like the impeachment of Clinton, that whole Lewinsky shit, like what? Like presidents are getting blowjobs? Like I was raised like told, you know, if you're good at school, you can become president one day. It's like, is that what I have to do in school, or do I need to get head in the back of the classroom? Like, does that get me to the presidency quicker if I get ahead in the back of the school bus?
And then it feels like the like virtue, like it's what it does is it fucks up your moral compass of like what like virtue of like leadership actually is, like, you know.
Disillusionment, complete shattering of the moral compass, and just like and then yes, and then you know, that's where cynicism comes in, and people go, well, fuck, I'm not going to play by the rules. Why would I play by the rules if the president's not playing by the rules? If the government is conspiring to, you know, make these utterly corrupt decisions, and, you know, we're going into a war without any real pretext, and that was all a lie, and everyone's lying. So why am I going to hold fast to my values of like truth and honesty? It completely screws you up. I'm talking about you, and it's like me and us. So, you know, being of that time, I think it's almost natural that there was this whole rise of snark and cynicism, and it definitely bled into Phish. And, you know, my first show was 2/28/03. So not only was it the 03 run, which you said was so great, but it was like this special Nassau show, which I guess in hindsight, people are saying is one of the top 10 shows ever, maybe top 20 shows ever. For that to be my first experience, talk about getting spoiled, dude. Like, I went into that show so hyped up because I really got into Phish after their initial hiatus. So I had never had even a chance. Like I wasn't even consciously aware of this band. I remember New Year's Eve when Peter Jennings, you know, said the Phish, and they cut to Cypress. And I think I was getting into Phish like around that time. But, you know, I was too young to go to shows, whatever it was. I just never this was my first show. I was so immersed in this band between 2000, 2001, 2002. I finally got a chance to see the band. I'm so blown away by its pure joy, pure bliss, but very quickly that like appreciation and gratitude for just being at a Phish show, which now I look at it, that's the baseline. Like if I go to a Phish show now, it's just like, holy shit, I get to see this band do this incredible thing that only this band can do, create an environment that only they can create. And I feel blessed to be in the presence of them and this community. And it's all appreciation. It's all gratitude. I don't have any of that snark. I don't have anything else but appreciation and gratitude, which is how I started. But then, you know, to your point, like Coventry, I went to a bunch of those 04 shows. Even at the last show I saw in 04 was at Camden.
Oh, I was at that show. It was so bad.
Dude, I was so upset. Yeah, I was so like angry that like, this is the last, because I thought, again, this is the last show I'm seeing.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to Coventry. I'm like, this is my last Phish show with Sense and Subtle Sounds.
Yeah.
Which I fucking hate. Like, dude, this is also part of being a fan.
At the time, you hated it.
At the time, I hated all the new stuff. I hate like any new album, forget it. Forget it. Undermine? Are you kidding? Like, what is this shit? What are they doing with Undermine? Crowd control. Like, they're releasing this as a, look, I'll stand by that sound. Still kind of blows. But you know, to me, I was so caught up in the judging and criticizing and comparing that by that last show in 04, when, you know, the looping, all the looping he was doing, and clearly we know where that's coming from now, but that wasn't the Phish that I got into, that I liked. They were bringing something new. And here's a weird thing I'll say too, man. I was sober for all these shows. I was stone cold Scott sober for like my first probably 15, 20 Phish shows, like 03, 04, all that. I didn't drink, I didn't do drugs, I didn't do anything. And that I wrote about in the pieces, kind of ties back to my dad being a politician and the truth is I did have a very strong moral compass, even though I was like wrestling with it. I still like abided by the rules because I thought, you know, part of it was if I get, God forbid, arrested for drunk driving or, you know, possession or anything, like my dad, that's my name in the paper. And that's actually my dad's name in the paper. And it's going to fuck his career up. So I was very conscious of that, and scared. You know, there's something to the idea of like doing drugs and you lose control. And I was very much, you know, a need for control is another pattern I have in my family. Like the idea of me being out of my mind on drugs or drunk even was scary because I don't know how I'm going to react. Maybe I will jump off the roof of the building like I saw in all those PSAs, those after school specials. Like that shit hit, like dare hit me.
Yeah, you might be you're a dare. You might be a dare like example.
Dude, I truly was. Like I have a picture of me shaking Officer Marino's hand with my dare essay. I was lockstep with dare, with the PSA. I'm not a chicken, you're a turkey. You know, this is your brain on drugs. I mean, dude, I saw that shit and I was a kid. I was scared. That worked on me. I didn't have an older sibling or older brother to go, oh, that's bullshit, dude. Just take a hit. I didn't have anyone in that life.
No, man, they had the cop in the classroom. Like, when you have a cop in the cop in the classroom telling you with handcuffs and a gun, being like, this is what's going to happen to you.
Dude, it really was terrifying to me. And you know, I was a scaredy cat. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of complex, you know, emotional, psychological reasons for all that probably, but it really had an effect on me to the point where I truly did not partake of this stuff for a while. So here I was experiencing Phish, okay? And Phish has always been the band where the joke is like, oh, you've got to be high to enjoy it.
Right. Like going back to like the mid 90s, like if not before.
Yes. And meanwhile, here I am sober and loving it. Like I loved, but you know what? I loved the studio albums. I just love these rock songs that they were creating. Because I got into Phish after being into, you know, like so many people, I mean, whether it's Hendrix, Grateful Dead, Zeppelin, I mean, you know, classic rock, Queen, whatever, you know, Beatles, of course, like all of that. And then Zappa, but like Grateful Dead, you know, led me all to Phish, the band, Dylan. I could just keep naming bands, but like these were all bands that were the foundation of my music love. And for those bands, I mean, so, you know, no one was really saying you have to be high to enjoy Zeppelin. Like it didn't have the same type of connotation, right? Like I could hear Zeppelin and be like, this fucking rocks. Like this is just good old fashioned rock and roll, blues rock. And it just hit me. I can't explain why. I just connected to this music. So with Phish, I would hear a song like Chalk Dust and it's like, yeah, this is just another song in the lineage of just great fucking rock songs. And I didn't need a 30-minute, 40-minute space jam within Chalk Dust like I got at it, you know, with all these loops and things and whale songs to make that experience for me. I actually wanted the tight jam studio. That's what I wanted when I went to Phish shows. I had this expectation. And when I started to realize, it was like, oh yeah, they're jamming a lot. And I don't really connect with the jams. I know now why.
Yeah. Well, why? Why did you feel like you weren't connecting with that aspect of
the Phish experience? I will say this, and maybe this is controversial, but I think there is something to, you know, here's what I'll say. It comes down to attention. And I also have ADHD, which was undiagnosed, especially at that time. So what does that mean? That means I have trouble focusing. Jams are really works of art. Right? Improvisational jams, what these four people are doing and the way they're in tune and the way they're creating music just on the fly, in the moment, totally divine from some, unknown source, which they'll admit to. It's something that really needs to be focused on to fully appreciate. Just like going to a museum, just like really staring at a painting, staring at a work. It's a work of art. And there have been times, especially early on, like, I just lose focus. I'm in a jam. I go, what song is this even? Like, where are we? I'm talking to my buddy or whatever. And I don't appreciate, if I'm not locked in, I'm not appreciating. What I found that psychedelic drugs do for me, I'll speak only for myself, is that, wow, it brings me to presence. It brings me to a place where my mind can actually focus on this art that's unfolding, and I feel connected to it in a deep, visceral way, where there's like this mind meld going on, where I'm part of the music, and I'm part of this, and my energy is mixing with their energy, and the way they describe the connection with the fans, like that, I tap into that with the help of psychedelics. It really helped me tap into. Not to say that I couldn't do before. I definitely had some transcendent spiritual experiences sober. I can remember SPAC. I can remember Yem at SPAC in 2004, and I can only describe it as like an orgasm. I've had this like a musical orgasm. I mean, it's a full body a feeling where I'm just like, it just takes over me, this like shock of energy that I got at a Yem when I was locked in, when I'm dancing hard, and when they hit the that certain note, and it hit that crescendo, and it's like I felt myself just exploding. And that's happened rarely in my life, but I was sober for that. And it happened at an Assembly of Dust show in Baltimore, Maryland, at the Funk Box. It's random.
I was at that SPAC show, and we were, my brother and I were in the upper level of that, and that was that set two with the ghost twist, and like that Yem to just like bookend, like to be the icing on the cake of it was amazing.
Nuts. So like, there's moments that I've experienced at shows, and maybe you could say the band was locked in that night versus another. So, you could, if you really want to get into that whole comparison thing, are they going to be the same, quote unquote, every night? Is the energy different? Are they tired? They're humans after all, right? Like, yeah. Maybe one of them has gastroenteritis, and like they're just not going to be focused so much, whatever it is. But, to me, like, getting back to kind of what we talked about earlier about, appreciating it for what they are versus the expectation of what I want. That's the key difference. I was going into shows at a certain point after that, amazing first show with Destiny Unbound, and dude, like the naivete I had, frankly, when that song was being played, I had no idea what it was.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never heard that song before, even in all my listening and all my bootleg. I mean, they rarely played it. They hadn't played it live in 11 years.
Yeah.
And this song starts kicking in, and it's the second song of the first set. And I'm scratching my head, and the wave of recognition. Like, it took people in an arena, I would say 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. You could tell the old school heads who knew it were losing their minds, and they're telling, Destiny Unbound, it's Destiny Unbound. And people are going, what? And like, there's like this awakening that happened, and you can hear it in the recording, like the slow build to the mania of everyone like losing their mind when they realized what was happening. For me, I was like, riding the wave of that. Like, I didn't know what the song was. I don't know what was going to happen. And then the song comes on. I'm like, oh my God, this song rules. I fucking love that song. In the moment I loved it. It's one of my favorite songs now, maybe because it has a special place in my heart. But
I mean, it's the first Phish song you've ever heard, like live. Yes, that's amazing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Birds of a Feather, technically Birds, but second song, and to have that, like, just that whole emotional moment around it. It was so, so powerful. But dude, that level of pure innocence and bliss, you get jaded very quickly as a Phish fan, as I did going into shows going, okay, I want to repeat that experience. Well, just like going to a 5-star Michelin restaurant. How many times has it happened to you, Brandon? You go to an amazing restaurant, you have the best meal of your life, you tell everybody about it, you bring your girlfriend, you bring your friend, you go, you gotta go, you come back, it wasn't as good as I remember.
It disappoints.
Yep. So this is something that is just inherent to human behavior that I've realized. And it comes from a sense of expectation. expectations, what I've realized is a very powerful statement. I'll slow this down because I speak fast. Expectations are nothing but premeditated resentments. Think about that. You're going into it. It's beautiful. That's what it is. You're going into this experience. Like I had maybe an expectation for this podcast. By the way, I had no expectation. I had no idea what we're going to talk about because I didn't want to be disappointed. I want to come. I'm having a great time, by the way. Had I come in thinking like it's going to be this and it's going to be that and it's going to be this amount of time, and if he doesn't match this, if he doesn't ask me this, I'm going to be pissed. No, I had no expectations and I'm having the time of my life. But when you set expectations, whether it's like for the Mets to win, for Phish to play your favorite song, for this meal to taste as good as it did last time, you're inevitably setting yourself up for disappointment and ultimately resentment. Like I started to resent this band in a weird way. The thing I love the most, I started to go, what the fuck? Why are they writing a song called Joy? What the hell? Why are they playing that? I don't want to hear that. You know, I would start to like actually get angry. And it's such an unhealthy approach, I've realized.
Yeah, dude, like 100%. I'm glad you brought the Mets thing up because that's an analogy that I always like bring up to people outside of the Phish world that don't really understand it, and they'll be like, "Wait, you're going to do this again?" or like whatever. And I'm like, it's kind of no different from like being a season ticket holder of your favorite sports team. You know what I mean? And like the community elements are there. Like you have people, like it's there's a social like component of it, of course, like, but going into it, you're gonna have like the best day ever as long as you are mentally prepared, or as long as you want it to be the best day ever, and there, unlike sports, there isn't the potential for lingering disappointment. Like if you set your expectation right,
like with sports, by the way, it's a great take. I've actually never made that comparison myself. And what I love about it is in the same way that, yes, you can go to 80 Mets home games a year. They're all gonna be different. You don't know what they're going to play, right? Like how they're going to play, how many hits they're gonna have, how many stolen bases. Just like with a Phish show, you don't know what they're going to play. You go into an experience and it's just, you go because you love this thing and you want to see what they do and how they perform. The difference though, which is on Phish's favor, is like, there's no losing in a Phish
There's
show.
no losing.
like Phish will never lose. The Mets could lose, and they have in the past quite often. And like that can break your heart if you really attach yourself to the outcome. But as long as you go into the Mets game without attachment to the outcome, without expectations, I'm going to go to see the Mets because I love the Mets and I love watching them play. And frankly, part of it is I love to see them fail at a certain degree. Like I take them as they are. Like they're lovable losers. That's how they've sort of historically been. I mean, they started their fucking franchise as the losingest team in Major League Baseball history. They lost 120 games in their first season. It's like setting records for mediocrity. So that's how they were born into this world.
That's not even mediocrity, man.
Yeah. They were born in the darkness. Like they're the bane of baseball. So, but again, like knowing that, like I love them for who they are. And for Phish now, I love them for who they are. And man, they can do no wrong in my opinion. Like,
what did you think though, like went down when you started to feel like there was a lot of, you were associating negativity with it? Was there like a behavior or like a pattern that you were doing? Like for me, I feel like honestly, like it was the internet, like that kind of framed a lot of that conversation. And look, it's no different than the way people talk about anything on the internet at the end of the day. But I'm kind of curious, like, is that like, what do you feel like was like a habit that helped inform that sort of thing?
Well, I think it was for me, it goes deeper than that. For me, it is a pattern that I inherited from my childhood. Whether it's just the idea of being critical, self-critical, judging of others, comparing, stems from a childhood, and I when I talk about these things, it's very, very sensitive, especially to the people in my family who hear, specifically my parents. My parents are wonderful people. Like when I talk, when I talk about things that are personal to me or people personal to me, I try to make very clear that I'm not talking about them personally. Like, I don't want them to take it personally, because that's a huge thing I've learned too. There's a book called The Four Agreements. Have you heard of this book?
Yeah, of course.
Well, I hadn't heard of it until a year ago. Okay. This book, and if your listeners have not heard of it, I suggest every single person. In fact, I do this thing where I talk to people about this book. If they've never heard of it, I just go on Amazon and I buy it for them right there, and it gets to their house. I think this is like the essential. This is the helping friendly book, in my opinion. Every single person on earth should read this book. It's a slim volume. It's an easy read. In fact, I didn't even read it. I listened to it on Audible, on tape, with Peter Coyote reading it, by the way, which is awesome.
That's
amazing,
awesome.
amazing voice. They had these kind of like Peruvian wind flutes, adding some a sound design to
texture.
Yeah, a little texture. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. I think, if you really pay attention to it and let it and absorb its teachings, it could be a life-changing book. And the Four Agreements, I'll give the nutshell. It, like, essentially the premise is we all make agreements. We make thousands of agreements. Life is nothing but a series of agreements we make with each other, with ourselves, even our names. Something as simple as my name. I'm Scott Rogowsky. Who the hell told me that? Well, my parents named me that. I was told, and as I got old enough to understand language and concepts like me, mine, and names like, oh, I'm Scott Rogowsky. Okay, I'm going to agree that that's my name. Like, I'm not gonna say no. My name is Morph Dusseldorf. Like my name is Scott Rogowsky. If you tell me that's my name, that's my name. I accept it. You tell me I live in New York, I live in New York. You tell me I'm, this is my phone number. That's my phone number. I mean, we're just told stuff. What are these things? What is information and data? It's just things that we agree to. When we agree to it, it's made real. It becomes our truth, right? So like a stop sign. I stop at the stop sign. I stop at red lights. That's an agreement we all make as a society. Anyway, you get the point. But he says there are only 4 agreements. Throw every other agreement away. They're not important. Your name isn't actually that important. The name of your country isn't important. Names of countries change all the time. Nothing really matters except 4 things. Be impeccable with your word. Don't take things personally. Don't make assumptions, and do your best. That's it. You abide by those agreements, you're set for life. And so, like, taking things personally why is it so hard to not take things personally? Well, welcome to the ego. Welcome to Carl Jung's lecture on persona and shadow self. I mean, listen, I've gotten way into psychology. In fact, I'm actually in the process of, this is nuts. I'm applying to graduate school, Brandon.
Wow.
For a
40?
master's PhD at 40 for a master's PhD in depth psychology and consciousness. And listen, will I get in? I have to have like 3 letters of recommendation. I have to have an academic writing sample. Dude, I haven't written a paper since like 2007, like an academic paper. So I have no idea how I'm actually going to pull that together. But I promise you, deadline's June 30th. I'm going to get this application in. Whether they accept me or not is out of my control.
What school? What program?
It's called Pacifica, and it's an online program.
Nice.
And
That's amazing.
Pacifica, they're based in California. So I have to, there's some things I have to do to even like be eligible, but I'm working on it. But my point is, I love this shit now. I could talk about it forever, and I want to write about it and explore it. And when I think about like taking things personally, why it's so hard for me even to talk to my parents about my childhood and how they raised me, because instantly my poor mother, my dad, well, you're saying I wasn't good enough? We tried our best. We tried so hard. I know you did. It's not about what you did or didn't do. I love you. It's nothing to do with it. I'm just talking about the reality of what happened. Let's take the personal out of it. We have to accept the reality. And the reality is, I was raised with a sense of there's a right way and there's a wrong way. And again, that seems like a normal thing to be raised with, values like you do things the right way. And if you don't do things this way, well, then you're wrong and you're bad. And you're not going to get into this school. You're not going to do this and that. All these negative consequences will flow if you're not right. So what is that? Listen, again, it's a quality that I think most good parents think is the proper way to parent, like saying strict rules or this, no, you do things my way and this how it. But that sort of creates a complex, at least it did for me, where I was so freaking neurotic. It just creates this neuroses of, I've got to do things right. And if I don't, I'm a failure. And then that reflects onto me. I'm a failure. And then I point to others because it makes me feel better. Oh, well, this is literally how I would think sometimes. I'd see kids smoking in high school. I'm like, geez, can't believe they're smoking or drinking. My God, you have to be 21 to drink. We're only 16. What are you doing? Oh, you're breaking the law. Dude, like, that's fucked up. Like, that would be me, like, judging and saying, versus like, hey, now I go, hey, you want to smoke? You smoke. You want to? You do you. I don't care what you do. I got my life. I'm going to live my life the way I want to live it, and I'm happy living my life, and everybody can live their life their own way. That's sort of my evolved take, but that's not the take I had when I was brought up to think there's one way to do it, the Rogowsky way, and if you don't do it this way, you're in big trouble, Buster, So yeah, that's where the pattern comes from, Brandon. It really traces back to that. Of course, the internet is sort of the ego, in this digital form, essentially, because, I mean, listen, society is ego. Everything is built by the ego. And what does it come down to? It means like, well, it goes one of two ways, right? There's the pride and the shame. There's like, they played my favorite song. Yes. That's my favorite song. I said, great. It's not my favorite song, but I'm glad they played your favorite song. Okay. That's your ego celebrating your favorite song based on your personal preferences that were developed based on your childhood and whatever lived experiences you have brought you to this moment at this show where you created in your mind a favorite song. If they play it, it's the best day ever. If they don't play it, fuck you. You ruin my day, right? Like, that's the dynamic. That's what it comes down to. And every single one of us comes to these preferences through our own personal journey. Our own lived experiences bring us to our taste. It comes down to taste. Like, I've always been fascinated. What is taste?
I would say it's like, it's the combination of like multiple, it's the combination of multiple factors, it's a lens. Taste is a lens. And like, it's the combination of everything we grew up with, and was top of mind. And then the lens in which how we kind of filter in what we don't like and don't like around it. Like, I mean, I know that sounds like absurdly simplified, but like, that's really what I feel like it comes down to. Is it's just a filter at the end of the day,
It's, yes, you're right. And it's the filter, the lens, but who crafts it? You're wearing glasses right now, right? You have a prescription. You have a specific prescription in those lenses that is allowing you to see clearly, right? Your prescription is different from my prescription. I'm assuming that, like, most of us have different prescriptions. Maybe some of us line up exactly right, but it's very rare. Both eyes. My prescriptions are like +5, +4. They're different high. Astigmatism. My point is, we all have these lenses, these frameworks for how to view life, and they're shaped by our biological factors, psychological factors, cultural, social, our exposures, our experiences. It's all just dynamic, but it's our entire life. It's everything that we experience from birth to the present moment that shaped my taste.
I think there's a lot of social coding in taste, like, too, though. Like, I think like the social coding of the environment that you grew up in, like, of course, is obviously the easiest thing, I think, to digest it as. But then as you get older, the social coding of taste, that comes as it's curated, and, you have day-to-day experiences with other people, and, the alignment you want to see in that. Like, a good example of this for me, like, is, okay, I grew up as this, like, Phish. I was the Phish guy, the Phish guy in college. Like,
but how did you get to that point? How did you get to Phish guy?
So I was the oldest in my family, and like, of three, and like, all the cool older kids were into Phish in my high school. And like, that was like, to me, like, and I would also say, so I grew up in a really musical household. Both of my parents are music teachers. So there always was a really inherent love of music. And, getting, like, grew up around a lot of jazz, listened to a lot of jazz, like, with my dad, like, grew up playing, like, involved in band, that sort of thing. And Phish was a way that I could kind of geekily be into that, but also, like, I saw the older kids do that. Like I didn't have an older brother, you know, so like, or older sister. So I saw the older peers in my life doing that, and I was like, "Ooh, that's a lane," and absorbed that, you know.
Well, that's dude, you're answering the question. Like, now, where did you grow up?
Pennsylvania.
What, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Okay, so in your local Pennsylvania community, in your high school, in your social environment, the cool kids, and that's something that you sort of deemed also like what makes you thought these kids were cool. Now you can even go back further. Why did you think these particular kids were cool, or were they just in your high school they were socially crowdsourced, labeled as the cool kids. Like everyone just said, those are the cool kids.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
So that's your high school. But what if you grew up in Kansas City or Iowa and the cool kids in that high school were into Garth Brooks?
Yeah.
Well, then you'd be into Garth Brooks. Like it's just
Totally.
It's just kind of like, and essentially you are, that's your circumstance. That's the accident of your birth. You're born to musical parents. You didn't choose that. You're born in your Pennsylvania town. You didn't choose where you're raised. Go to this high school. So it's just like we're all products of our environments, biological, cultural, social, all that. And that shapes our taste. And like for you, you got into Phish because you thought these kids were cool. They liked Phish. Boom. That explains it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like that's how you kind of, I think, navigate between worlds. And like I said, it's a filter in which you you start viewing the world in. Eventually it becomes a worldview. Like and taste is it's a lens, like, but it's totally a product of your environment. There's no doubt about that. You don't just wake up like.
and then with Phish, by the way, like so there's the music, right? You can hear the music. Go, oh, this music hits me. Like for me, I heard the music, like, man, whatever this is, it just works for me. Then you go to a show. Now you're being exposed to an entirely new environment. You're being exposed to tie-dye t-shirts and patchouli and hacky sacks and devil's, all the hippie stereotypical stuff. So like that's part of that culture and that scene. So very rarely are you going to a Phish show and seeing people, dressed like goths, right? Like you don't see like Marilyn Manson, spiky, punky hairdos at Phish shows because it's not that culture. But then you go to a Marilyn Manson show, you see that there. So you say it's like that, and then my taste in clothing is now affected by my taste in music, my taste in how I, dress and wear my hair and makeup. It's all influenced how I grew a beard. Did I grow a beard because I liked Phish and because all the older guys who liked Phish had beards? Maybe. I don't, I couldn't even tell you. Like, but the point is, why is the wook like stereotype? Well, that's just, again, that this hive mind around this culture creates stereotypes and archetypes. I mean, Jung calls them archetypes, but it's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just, that's what it is. And it's a product of the group culture. I mean, yeah, we're breaking it down in a very kind of deep way, which is cool. But like, when you really break it down, man, the funny thing I've realized, dude, is that, we're so obsessed with this band Phish, right? You're doing a podcast about it. I wrote 4,500 words about this band. And if I was born in Iowa to a different family, went to a different high school and exposed to Dierks Bentley, or,
Dierks Bentley,
Dwight Yoakam, literally, yeah, I'd be going to those shows, Kenny Chesney, whatever the fuck, like that would be, and I would be just as gung-ho, just as passionate, writing about that, podcast about it. You would too. I mean, so when you think about that, you could go, oh God, like, is this all just determined? Was I just determined to be this way? Do I have free will? I mean, this gets really like, Jesus, did I choose to even like this band? But, honestly, I kind of stopped there because
that's a little bit of like that layer cake of, Universal. That's where we get a little wonky. I will say one thing on this though, like especially when it comes to like taste, there's kind of this has always existed in, let's call it the Grateful Dead aligned things, but in any scene too. There's this thing where you're running from something into a musical world, like Phish. The Dead is a great example of it too, of course. I kind of think of like the end of Freaks and Geeks when Lindsay Weir like gets on the proverbial bus and like goes on Dead tour in the early 80s, and what that meant in the culture at the time. And like that's a strong, powerful moment. But I think one of the things that's really great as kind of you start to mature, or as you start to see or have a sense of maturity around these worlds, is the ability to open them up to different people, and the ability for it to not be something that you're running from something into, but something that is a world that you can open up to other people. And what I mean by that is, like, for example, and I don't know if you've had this experience with Phish or not, but my brother and I have been to probably at least 80 some shows together. Like, there's shows that he's gone to, there's shows that I've gone to. Like, it's who we are at this point in time. Like, it's what we do. Like, super, super important part of like our relationship, and like, etc. But then in 2017, we were like, let's invite mom to a show. Like, and we invited her to the Pittsburgh show before the Bakers Dozen. And like, we had the best time. Like, and it was like the coolest thing ever to show, our mother this, grew up teaching middle school music, and like, to show her this world. And like, that kind of like really changed a lot of how I think about Phish, like, where it's not really something to run into, or like it's not like the yang to a yin anymore, like, for me, where like it's something that can be a river, like a river, you can surrender to the flow, where like where surrendering to the flow means like, hey, this thing is just a part of my life, and like, if you can bring people in and out of it, despite what their preconceived notions are, etc., maybe there's a little bit of understanding that comes from each other, like, in that type of moment, and sharing that kind of experience.
Man, I mean, we haven't even gotten fully into, I mean, we could talk for hours, dude.
I know.
I don't know how much time you have, but just the idea of, so we've talked about like why we got into Phish, right? Like how our tastes evolved. Now, how about we discuss the inherent qualities of Phish that are, I would argue, and this is where there could be controversies, like, how unique is it, right? We just talked about, I could either be a Dwight Yoakam fan or a Phish fan, depending on my circumstance. But I believe personally, and I wrote about this in the piece, like, there is something about, and maybe it's improvisation in general, improv comedy. I was thinking about, when I was writing that piece, I didn't include this, but man, I've had some transcendent experiences where I've never laughed harder in my life at an improv comedy show, where it's just about being present. Because when you're locked into a moment and you don't know what's going to happen next, and again, being locked into that jam, or even being locked into a set and not knowing what song they're going to play, having that experience, being present, is the key. I think.
Yeah.
I think that is what unlocks this whole world, and what unlocks, frankly, a higher consciousness. And it's why, and this is why, tying psychedelics into my piece, when I actually started to experiment with psychedelics, and what I love about Phish, what I ultimately, all of the full circle is, like, who knows how my life would have played out otherwise, but Phish brought me to psychedelics, right? Like, I may not have ever tried acid had I not been into Phish. And the fact is, I did it at a show, and it blew me open, cracked me open, and was like, oh my God, now I understand why the jams are so goddamn cool. Like, why they wrote a song called Split Open and Melt. I was splitting open and melting along with the song. And I'll never forget that moment, and seeing like the music and seeing the MSG like move, and seeing, realizing that, oh my God, not everything is as it seems. And there's a whole other layer of reality than the one that I'm just letting come in through my normie lens. My third eye was squeegeed, all of that Huxley, Leary stuff. So it's an incredible experience, a psychedelic experience. And I hope every single person on earth has it, because to me, if we can get there, and what does it mean? It means it ties into the ego, because my ego was preventing me from even going there. Like, I wanted to maintain control. I had to surrender to the flow. I had to allow myself to say, you know what, I'm going to try this drug. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to affect me, but I'm going to be open to it, open to the experience, and trust in the universe, trust that I'm going to be okay. And lo and behold, I was. Like, I jumped off the cliff and I was caught, I landed safely. And like, once I had that experience, I was able to, okay, I can do it again. I'm not doing it all the time. By no, I mean, you have to, I mean, I believe that there should be a healthy respect and intentionality every single time I do any type of drug, any type of mind altering substance, put it that way. I'm going into it with an intention, and it's respect. I'm not the type of, and again, I'm not judging anybody else. I'm not the type of person to get high and just play video games. I don't do that. When I get high, it's because I want to write. I want to explore my mind. I want to think about shit. I want to take myself to a different level. Right. And that's me. And that's what I've chosen to do. But I think there's something inherent with Phish and the improv and the music and the community and all that, and being present to the moment, taking the psychedelic and being open. It opens the mind to what else there is. Again, like, there's so much more to life. And like someone like my dad, you take bring your mom to a Phish show. Oh my God, I would love to bring my mom to a Phish show. I would love to bring my dad to a Phish show. But I know, even when my dad was my sidekick on my talk show for 10 years.
I know. I remember going to it.
Yeah, sidekick Marty. So I swear to God, even in that sober environment, without music, it was comedy. I'm having conversations with John Oliver and Steve Buscemi and John Hamm and Nathan Fielder. And my dad was sitting there on the couch next to these people. I'm having the conversation. My dad's completely lost. He has no idea most of them who the person is, what we're talking about. Because his mind, and by the way, and God bless my dad, he isn't the most curious, I would say. He really isn't. And he admits it. Like, I've asked him, Dad, do you ever think about what happens when you die? Even just a basic question like that. No, I don't think about that. Why would I think about that? What's the point? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe because it's kind of like the fundamental question of all human living, since the dawn of man for tens to thousands of years. Like, it's the one thing that everyone thinks about, kind of. But hey, if you tell me you don't think about it, I'm going to take it your word. You don't think about it. And what does that mean, though? I mean, it means inherently you're not that curious. Not a judgment, but I think I'm just I'm just saying, like, that is the reality. I think if anyone observing someone who would say, I would never thought about what happens when I die. I don't think about, is there a God? I don't think about these things. Okay, well, again, maybe it doesn't seem to be a curious mindset, and that's okay. But my point is, bringing him to a Phish show, like, you have to be open to it. You have to be curious about it. And if you don't come into a position where you're curious and open about it, then it's not going to hit you. It's just not going to affect you. I was closed off to so many things in my life, and including self-help, including these transformational things, right? Like I was saying earlier, I was closed off to the idea that why would I even try when I've read a book by Wayne Dyer and it didn't work, or I listened to some podcasts and it didn't affect me, or, I don't know how to meditate. I've tried yoga. I can't do it. So I'm going to shut it down and not even go any further. No, I was closed off, but I evolved to find a way to, like, try it and just be open and say, bite the bullet and say, screw it. It comes down to faith, Brandon. Like, ultimately, at the end of the day, I had to have faith that I'm going to try this and it's not going to kill me. At the very worst, like I said, I have 7 days on my phone, but I'm going to try it. And it got me to this next point, and everything else is, I wrote about Phish the way I wrote about, I don't know. It's just like, as I think I've explained, like, I'm in such a different place now, in ultimately a happier place, but a more understanding place and a more compassionate place for myself. And then that allows me a loving place for myself to then, now I have a fiance. I've never had a fiance before.
Dude,
I love this woman.
Congrats. It's so exciting.
She's the love of my life. She's behind me now. And like that, to know and not even have doubts. Like in the past where I would meet people, I say I love them. Do I really love them? What do I mean by love? What is love? I don't even know if I know what love is. I kept thinking, like, I would, like, meet people and say, I love you. And then, like, I look, oh, I didn't love that person. Oh, I didn't love that person. What the fuck? Do I know what love is? Now I know what love is, because I experienced it for myself. I had to love myself to know what it means. And now I feel confident when I love someone else, like I love my fiance, that I truly, truly love her unconditionally. And that's the end of the story.
When Phish says surrender to the flow is life. And that is what you've surrendered to.
But Phish is, that's why, just to wrap it up, like, Phish is unique because they speak to these things. What I don't know if I wrote this exactly, but I was also thinking more about like the arc of the band. Okay. And not to talk for another 3 hours about this, but, you know, these were kids. Trey was 19 when he started this band, right? And they were acid heads. They talked about it, right? Like they were, yeah, big time. Like him and Fishman going to Greece, writing Yem on acid, right? Like, and that's great. I think that's wonderful. Like they found it at an earlier age, and it unlocked things for them, and it unlocked creativity. And they wrote this incredible music and created this whole new genre. Essentially, they kind of created jam bands and really changed the world. I mean, they really did, in my opinion, like change the musical world, right? And acid helped. Acid was a huge influence on the Grateful Dead as well. All the acid tests, like it's just it's inherently part of it. Like Jerry Garcia thanked Albert Hoffman, right? Of like all the people, like thank you, Albert Hoffman, for fucking synthesizing LSD and making this possible. So acid enabled this music to exist. And then what happens though, right? And then the lyrics are crazy and everything is nonsensical and silly and fun. It's joy. It's pure joy. And it's expressed in a visceral way, right? But the drugs got darker in the 90s, right? And Trey, you know, he's human. Again, these are just humans. We're all humans. We all have foibles. And the harder drugs infiltrated the scene. It fucking killed Jerry. And it turned the scene dark. And all of a sudden, you know, the band couldn't handle it. And I was doing some deep analysis of the lyrics, man. We'll have to have a second episode here.
Yeah, where we talk about like ghosts and stuff like that.
Well, we talk about like, I mean, birds of a feather. Like you look at the lyrics, like, my God, he's telling about these are people who say they're my friend, but they actually aren't, and they're trying to get something out of me, and I can't trust anyone. There's a lot of mistrust in those lyrics, a lot of danger, and like know who's your friend, keep what's important. Like like having to kind of close the wagons, because things got so crazy and out of hand backstage and all that. And then he gets sober, and then there's this new born again Trey, right? And like the joy and the love and the Cliff Bars and green tea and, and beauty of the dream. And it's all, people could say it's corny or whatever. I think it's so beautiful to trace this progression of this band, the man and the band. And he really got there. Now, I believe when I listen to his lyrics, everything's right. These newer songs, he's trying to tell his story now from his perspective. Like, look, I went through the darkness. I was thinking about the past, worrying about the future. Now I'm living for the moment. Happiness is now. Like, now he's understood. He got sober from his demons. I got sober from my negativity, my demons. And I understand just the way he does that presence, the now, that's where it all is. It's all in the presence. And that's why I think they're jamming, by the way. It's next level right now. They've unlocked new levels because more so even when they started, they are so present. And they're so coming from a place of gratitude and appreciation, all that fuzzy Christian rock stuff. Like I call it Christian rock Trey. Like in a sense,
everybody does. I do too.
Really, yeah. And you know what? My cynical younger self would have been like, that's terrible. Fuck that. I love it. I appreciate it. I understand where it comes from. I understand the journey he went on. Maybe it's just being older, getting older, maturing, whatever it is. I got there. I finally arrived. And I'm meeting them, on a level where I've never been before. And that's why I love this band like never before. I love myself like never before. I love Psychedelics like never before. I love it all, dude.
Dude.
The world is good.
Love it, man. Scott, I cannot thank you enough for your time. Thank you so much, man. It's so great. And we have to cut a part 2. There's a gazillion other things.
We got to do it. We'll do it.